Alpha Team report.
What's happening, Heather?
Alpha Team has been responding.
Bravo?
Still nothing.
You lost both teams? Get a grip on this operation, Heather. That's bored. Green light the asset.
Sir, I need more time.
We have no time. Are you going to give that order or not?
Sir, please.
You're too naive to see the truth. There's no bringing in Bourne. He has to be put down. And you obviously cannot do what has to be done. I am taking operational control. Asset, you have a green light. Repeat, you have a green light on Bourne.
Copy, guys.
We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to pick the laws, we enforce them. But at the end of the day, each and every member is to go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is August 2nd, 2016. I had a little fumble there over the new month. Our first show in August. So I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and we are coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights, Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, and you can listen on Spreaker.com, nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, and to the archives immediately following the show on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, and SoundCloud, as well as the next day on Stitcher and iTunes. On Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty and self-ownership, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom. Exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent, by threat of force and violence. And we are happy to hear from you either via phone at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. Or via Skype at Nonpartisan Liberty for All, which is the username. Just send a contact request with your name and what you want to talk about. And check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, which has all the contact information as well as links to all the social media original articles. I have actually just written a few that I posted over the weekend, and other things as well, archives, things like that. So you can also find all of the archives, every show we've ever done, at Spreaker.com. Sorry, I seem a little out of it. I woke up about, 15 minutes ago, almost exactly. I fell asleep on the couch before the show started. And believe it or not, I was watching CNN. I tried to watch some of the government media shows to see what bullshit they're putting out there. And all that was really on there, I swear, every story, and I'm not exaggerating, and I did fall asleep, but I saw the preview of what was going to be on Anderson Cooper, and every story was about Donald Trump. I'm not exaggerating. Nothing. Literally every single story that they previewed, again, I fell asleep, so I didn't actually see every single story. But when I woke up, when I was up, and when I saw the previews of the stories, every story was about Donald Trump. Why that is, I don't know. It ranges from him having, it's ridiculous stories too. The first story I actually saw was, and you're not going to believe this. So I think about tonight we're going to be talking all about police, and most of the show or part of the show is based on an article I wrote. And then we're going to continue with some of the stuff we talked about Friday regarding how to achieve freedom, what pertains to the police. But I think about during that time, the story they did was Trump eats fast food with a knife and a fork, which is funny because I do that too. And not maybe fries, but like I'll eat a hamburger with a knife and a fork because I'll put a lot of ketchup on it. And if I eat that shit, if I pick that shit up, it will probably leak out somewhere and I'm slob. And yeah, so I eat most fast food, even chicken. I eat chicken with a knife and a fork. So I'm the same way, actually. It's not a arrogant thing or anything like that. I don't remember when I started doing that. I think it started with the hamburger because of the amount of ketchup or barbecue sauce or whatever I'm putting on there. And then it went from there to, everything else. So they're doing a story on Trump while I don't know how many people today died or were murdered by police. It's usually 3 to 4, but who knows if there were any unarmed people or mentally ill people that had a knife. Or I didn't look at killed by police today, or it doesn't even have to be today, in the past week. That stuff that they could be covering, that's important. Or how many people's freedoms got violated. I mean, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about fucking Donald Trump's eating habits. And, the other stuff went from all the way from talking about Paul Ryan and their relationship and them endorsing each other to fucking, what else did they preview? I don't even remember. I remember the Paul Ryan story that they can't endorse each other. And the funny thing is that no matter what you believe, now, I believe the election is rigged, and it's been that way for a long time. Maybe going back, almost to the beginning. And when I say almost to the beginning, maybe not the first 5 presidents or something. I don't know. Who knows? But because I know people will get really insulted. The forefathers, they didn't rig the election. Well, Washington basically wasn't elected. I don't know as far as I know, I don't know the whole story behind that, how Washington became president. I don't recall him being elected, but I could be totally wrong on that. So I feel that I should know that, but I do not. I know that after that, they, of course, had elections, and they had a lot smaller base. But even if you don't believe that elections are rigged, it doesn't really matter, because you know how many people are in the country, you know how many people vote, and to think that your vote counts, and you've had 2 candidates put in front of you by, first of all, you had to be a Republican or a Democrat, And the same thing, there are at least 100 million people that participated in that process, like your vote means anything. And the process is really controlled by the political party. So the political parties put these two candidates in front of you. So even if you don't believe that it's rigged, which I don't know how you can't from what I just said. I mean, the political parties putting, at least to that point. But if you don't believe that it's rigged regarding whether Hillary or Donald Trump are going to win, and even you do realize that, I don't know the exact number because it all depends on the voter turnout, but you do realize that there's going to be at least 150 million people voting, and that your vote really doesn't mean shit. So who really gives a fuck what these people do and say? And it's just a waste of time and attention to get everybody focused it's not even every 4 years, because I mean the election cycle starts almost 2 years out, really. They start to talk about it. Then maybe a year and a half is when they really start to get into it. And then, of course, now once the convention starts, but even before that, I mean, when you have all the debates going on with the nominees and all of this shit, so it takes up so much coverage of at least national news that there's so many other things that you don't hear about, that get bumped, that are just, they consider meaningless, which in the big scheme of things are way more important to know about than fucking what Trump uses to eat a piece of fried chicken or a hamburger, and that he actually eats fast food, even though he's, a billionaire. Maybe to show the elites eat fast food, that they, because the whole conspiracy that, well, the elites don't eat, that stuff. But I don't think, or Donald Trump's not part of the real elites that run everything. He's not, wealthy enough or important enough. Donald Trump reminds me of, he's like a clown. The fact that he's even in the fucking whole election process is just, it's kind of funny to me. But whoever wins, even if he does win, it just means that, like I said before, the powers that be made a deal with him. And it actually would work out better for them, because then they could say, oh, look, things aren't rigged, because look, Donald Trump won, and it would give them something else, a quote-unquote outsider, and they'd be able to claim that, oh, yeah, the outsiders can win and all of this shit. And then Donald Trump would come in there and do all the same stuff that they want done anyway. And so would Hillary. I mean, it basically, there's, is there a couple things that, are different, that are the irrelevant shit that they use to show that they're different? Yeah. But pretty much they're not. Anyway, I want to save a lot of that. As I had mentioned on Friday, I need to do a show regarding that, so I don't want to waste it all right now on a totally different show. So on Friday or Thursday, the last show we've done we had talked about freedom and how, based on, what's going on, what can we do to change things and actually maintain the freedoms that we still have, which aren't many, if any at all, and to actually get some true freedom. And a lot of it had to do with the police, although the police being essentially dogs. I like to call them dogs more than puppets or other stuff, because dogs, they're bitches, the female dogs, but it's more insulting, I guess, because that's really what they are. And I had the opportunity to, I was talking to somebody today who's, works a lot with police, and was telling me just more shit and about how fucked up they are. And it's just really, people have no idea, none, even with all of, and I still don't either, even with all the stuff that I believe I know, I still, don't have any idea how fucked up it really is, because it's more fucked up than they say it is, and that gets reported on, and all the stuff that doesn't get reported. Even though what's even more fucked up is there is so much that does get reported on now, not by government media, but people like killed by police, and the Free Thought Project. They have a YouTube channel now. I suggest you check it out. Because they didn't have one before. I don't know when they got one, but I had found it recently. So they may have had one for a while, but they didn't at first. They just had the website where they were writing articles and things like that. Because you look at all these videos. I mean, you can go on YouTube and just put in different keywords regarding police, and the things that you just see people posting and with the interactions with police are just crazy. And you see how much, you see the obedient side. You really do, regardless what people say, because the same way people will sit there and say, well, one of the big things is ID. Somebody sitting there, there's a lot of videos where, say, somebody's not doing anything, or somebody's filming something that now they consider, if you're filming certain things, you could be filming them because you're a terrorist and you're going to blow it up. Of course, nothing, besides the World Trade Center, which I don't think they needed to film it first. Nothing's ever been blown up, but they claim there were all these plots, whatever. But they so they film these videos, and they may do it on purpose, and then you have the ones at checkpoints too, same type of thing. So it's nothing serious. The person will just say that they don't answer questions, and they'll ask for an ID, the cop. Now, when the person says that I'm not going to give you an ID unless you suspect me of a crime, which, depending on the state, I found out that in the state of Texas, which is pretty cool, you don't have to ID yourself until you're arrested. In Nevada, you have to ID yourself if you have to say who you are, I believe, just if a fucking cop asks you, which is fucked up. And Nevada is one of the more freer states, but it's becoming less free. That might be just a Clark County thing, but I think it's a state thing. I'm not sure, because usually things like that are state. But because of all these fuckheads moving in from California. But when it comes to guns, Nevada's a better state to live in, because you can't even open carry handguns in Texas. So Texas, which really shocked me when I found that out. And they fingerprint you when you get your license. So there's, it's weird. Depending on the state, you're going to find the positives and the negatives. But Nevada in general is a freer, and as I've talked about before, there's levels of freedom. It doesn't mean it's for free. It's just freer than like Massachusetts, but that doesn't mean anything. No state is free. It's just what level of freedom. It's like everything. I don't know how you do it on a scale, because really, like, everything freedom-wise is like a 2 or a 3 at the highest, and how do you even fit it all in there? Like, I guess you go to negatives or something. But, like, Massachusetts is like a -5. I don't know. I'd put it, having lived there, one of the Mass, California, although I'd probably put Mass lower than California. It's hard, because you look at like guns, California's seems to be at least a little freer with guns than Massachusetts, at least traveling from other states to California with guns. But I don't know, they could have changed their laws. And but yeah, Massachusetts actually, I don't know if I had brought this story up that they had, I might have brought it up last week, but I don't think I did, that they had, there was it's from an old law. I'm still not clear on this. That supposedly it's from an old law, but they didn't enforce it. But anything that has a magazine that's semi-automatic is illegal in Massachusetts, and the ban on quote-unquote assault weapons goes back to 98, but they didn't really enforce it. But now the Attorney General is, and there was something that she's not going to allow handguns with magazines, so you'd have to have only revolvers, I guess, and one shot. I don't even know how those would work. I know the rifles, like the bolt action, but I don't know how you have bolt action handguns. And I don't know how she can't just make up a law neither. So it's a little confusing exactly what's going on there. But they're really bad when it comes to guns. I know you need like a permit first to buy a gun, and then a permit for that gun. So, like, you need a permit to not even own a gun, just to get permission to buy a gun. It was crazy. And that was, 20 years ago. I don't know what the fuck it is now. So anyway, of course, there's levels of freedom. But in Texas, you don't have to give your ID. And there's two things. Like in Nevada, you don't have to give your ID on demand, I guess, just your name, but that is fucked up in itself. But anyway, most states, unless you're being investigated for a crime or detained for a crime or something like that, you don't have to give your ID. So, meaning like a cop can't just walk up to you on the street for no reason and say, give me your ID. And that's what they were doing. And they do it all the time. Now, they I guess, can ask. See, this is the whole thing. And this is how they get around shit, and it's fucked up and whatever. Cops can ask and say anything they want to you as long as they ask. And they can talk to you anytime they want, and you can walk away. And see, that's where they intimidate people, because people don't know if a cop's talking to them in the sense of they're just talking to them, or they're detained, that they're investigating them. So they fuck with you when it comes to shit like that. Which, of course, it goes in the list of hundreds of fucked up things that cops do. But they will sit there and fuck with you like that. But that's why you have to ask, am I being detained, or just walk away and, they'll try to stop you. But that might not be safe because they might just jump on you or something. But if they say no, then you can just walk away. You don't have to sit there and talk to them. But they can just walk up to you and talk to you. So, and on top of that, they can ask you for anything. So they can ask you for your ID and go over and talk to you and say, hey, what are you doing? And the majority of people don't know what their rights are, even though they're getting less and less, of course. But when it comes to the police, and the police don't even know. There's so many videos where the police didn't know, and they went and got their supervisor, and then the supervisor said, no, they're fine. Well, actually, I only saw 2 videos where that happened. So I don't know if that happens often, but it does happen where they know that they're violating their rights. Because essentially, the police can violate your rights if they fucking feel like it, and they don't get in trouble for it, and nothing happens. And so there's no incentive. And of course, we talked about this before. There's no incentive for the police to not violate your rights. Because, one, they have a monopoly on force, so you can't fire their department. And 2, there's no punishment for it. There's nothing that happens. If a police makes a false arrest, there's nothing that happens to them. They don't get punished. So any mistakes that they make, nothing happens to them. Usually, the only time police get charged with crimes is when they're actually engaged in criminal activity. Like, they're out there selling drugs and raping people, and, things we've talked about before. And we did a show on it about the 175. But as far as the rights violations and things like that, usually, and of course, acting like an asshole, they'll never get in trouble for that one. But when they were wrong, they didn't get in trouble. But the supervisor told them, the sergeant, that no, they're okay. And I have a couple of clips that hopefully I have this one it's short, but it's I think it's pretty short anyway. It's pretty good, where that's exactly what happens. That the sergeant comes over and I don't know if I actually got that one. But it was in front of the police station. A guy was filming in front of the police station. So a cop comes up and he's like, why are you filming my police station? And, the guy's telling him, basically, you have no right to ask me for my ID. And the cop says, yeah, I do. I can do whatever I want. I can ask you for your ID, and you're required to give it to me and all of this shit. And it goes on for a little while, and he's like, no, I'm not giving you my ID. What crime have I committed? Am I, being detained and all that stuff? And, of course, the officer says, no, you haven't committed a crime, but you need to ID yourself. You're filming my whatever he called it. It's his fucking property. So he said, we'll get a supervisor, and of course then the sergeant comes over because he had heard them, and the guy, they're explaining, and he says, no, he's good. And he's like, even filming? And he's like, yeah, he's good. I guess he had a little drone, but it was flying I think level or maybe a foot above his head. So I didn't realize at first it was a video using a drone, but it was, they talked about it after with the sergeant that it was a drone. But they had said that, no, he's okay. And the same thing happened with a DUI checkpoint as well, where they tried to detain somebody. So, yeah, they can, even when they're in the wrong and they don't have the right to do what they're doing, asking you for ID, one, you could still end up getting arrested. There was a girl in Texas who got arrested for not giving her ID. And those fucking douchebags, the young jerk-offs, the jerk whatever, the main guy had said that she should have just gave the ID. So let me explain this again, and I explained this before. You'll see comments, and I don't know, the government has people, and probably automatic bots or whatever too, but they try to shape opinion in social media. Don't think they don't. Who knows how many people they have that work for them that actually, are probably in a room on all of these different websites like YouTube and Facebook and all of these, commenting on things in a pro-government, pro-police, anything to do with government to make them look good. So, and of course there are people that side with the government. I'm not saying every single one of them comes from that. There are people that just, love police for whatever reason. It makes no sense. I don't know anybody who loves police. I know people that accept them for what they are, but I don't really know, personally, like I wouldn't be friends with anybody that loved police. Well, actually, that's not true. There had been like a couple people that I worked with that were loved the police. One of them was married to a FBI agent that worked at the Fusion Center that was on the DHS task force, or a DHS agent, a whole nother agency, because, the government needs so many fucking law enforcement agencies. Anyway, so, and then that totally threw me off where I was at. But these comments, a lot of people will say now, whether this is, again, government backed or government written comments where they're just trying to influence opinion, or real people, which they could be, but I think you're going to get both. But they'll say, well, and this is what this jerk off from the Young Turk said, why don't they just give the ID? And I'll let you in on a little secret, you fucking idiots. The whole point of not complying with something when it's your right, and this goes to all these people who I give credit to who, when they're stopped at a DUI checkpoint, tell them they don't answer questions, or because it's really unconstitutional, even though the Supreme Court ruled it is. And they ruled on it, I've said this before, based on the fact that, yes, it violates your rights, but safety is more important. That's why they ruled that. But they also, the other ones are the immigration checkpoints. And all these people that do all this stuff, and they get all this shit for it, when to me they're heroes, really, because they're trying to help to keep as many rights as possible. So the reason that they stand up for their rights, and this isn't non-compliance like I'm talking about, or violating laws or anything like that, or civil disobedience. This is just standing up for their own rights. The reason they do it, whether they plan it or not, because, you know, people will say, well, they went through the checkpoint to do that on purpose, and I was going to do that too. So what? You're just making sure the police can test you to make sure you're not drinking, but you can't test them to make sure they're doing their job correctly and not violating people's rights. You can do that if you fucking want to. So anyway, people will criticize people that, you know, and say they do it on purpose, and maybe they do, and there's nothing wrong with that, and criticize people for exercising their rights. And what they're doing, you fucking idiots, is helping to try to protect your rights, because so many rights have been taken away. They're trying to hold on and do whatever they can to hold on to as many rights as they can. And that's why they do it. You know, I'm sure there's some people also that do it because they think maybe they might get arrested or something like that. But most people do it because it's usually the other way. If you give your ID, then, you know, but there could be people that maybe don't bring it up because they have a warrant or something. But I'm sure the percentage is very small. It's mostly people that are doing it because if everybody did it, then the police would stop harassing you when it came to that thing. So if every time they asked someone for an ID, they said no, after a while, they're going to stop fucking asking, because they're going to be like, well, what's the point? If everybody who went through a DUI checkpoint refused to answer any questions, then eventually maybe DUI checkpoints would go away. Maybe not. But it would be, they get to the point where they might be like, okay, well, this is getting pointless because every time we do this, we don't get any drunk drivers, so it's not cost efficient. So the point being is that they are defending not only their rights, but your rights, and trying to hold on to as many rights as possible. And this idiot on this fucking show, who I don't know what the hell this douchebag stands for, and how he can call himself the Young Turks when he's like 45. And I don't know when he started it, but he didn't start it, 20 years ago. So YouTube's only been around since 2005, and I know he was on other shows, but in 2005, if he's 45 right now, or he's 35, and that ain't really young. It's not old, but it's whatever. At least that other girl who fucking pisses me off too, Anna Kasparian, who thinks probably she's all that. I mean, she's cute for a girl on the Young Turks, but that's about it. Anyway, she disagreed with him at least. So, and I think I have part of that clip, or I have the follow-up to it. So what I'm going to do is take a quick break to play some of those clips, since I had to rush to get everything together because I woke up so late. I should have set my alarm. I didn't plan on going to sleep. I was sitting on my couch. I slept the whole time sitting up on my couch, so that was an enjoyable sleep. So I'm going to play these clips, and we'll be right back. Just a couple things before I play them. Check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. If you want to call in, the number is there, as well as the username. The number 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664, and username for Skype if you want to Skype in, Nonpartisan Liberty for all one word. Also, there's a number of articles on a series I'm doing on the legalization of drugs. I added another article, as well as the article I'm essentially talking about tonight and referring to. I'm not going to really refer to the article throughout the show, but that's what a lot of the show is based on. I had posted on the website as well. And you can always donate to the show, since it's all self-funded and we don't make any money off the show. Just go to nonpartisanlibertyforall/donate. I believe there's a button that says donate, and you can click on that. So if you'd like to donate, I'd appreciate it. If not, no problem. I understand. A lot of people are having hard times right now, but if you'd like to donate, that would be fine. I'd appreciate any amount of money. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I've been talking with those who are familiar with the Detroit Threat Management Center, which is a security company like no other. They're more of they're a protection agency, is really what they are. But I mention them all the time because they're where I want to see things go, where the police are non-existent and we have these private security companies. But not like we had a conversation today, and I'll go into it actually when we get back, about security guards and how they're totally different. So we'll talk about that when we get back. But Dale Brown, who's the founder, creator, started with a dog and a shotgun owner, is going to be on either, I asked him for not next week, but the week after. So I think we should be good with that. And then we're going to have him on to do his own show periodically. Now, I'm not sure. We talked about starting once a month and then going to once a week for an hour. I wouldn't mind going to once a week right away. It's all about his time and what he wants to do. I'm open to whatever. I think personality-wise, he could easily carry a show, and story-wise, as far as being entertaining, not only being entertaining but being informative. I mean, you can talk to Dale forever. There's so many stories, and he has so much to say that I don't see that being a problem at all. Him being able to do a radio show. There's of course some things he'll probably have to get used to, just like anybody. But I'm not concerned about it being a entertaining show. He already has a following of people for what he does that respect him for what he does and are familiar with the Detroit Threat Management Center. And a lot of that is from Cop Block, who went down there and filmed videos, not from me. But I try to promote them as much as possible as well. Not just to, promote them for him, which I do that also because I had him on the show before and he's a nice guy and, I like him and he's just an overall good guy. I have a lot of respect for him for everything he's done. I mean, the shit that he went through to get to where he is now is just, and he didn't have to. He doesn't come from, he doesn't come from the ghetto. He's from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I think he didn't grow up rich, but he was like middle class. And he didn't have to do the shit that he does, but he wanted to help people. And you can tell, I mean, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to do what he's done and built what he's built. And hopefully at some point I can go out to Detroit and check it out. Not really the place I want to go on vacation, to be honest. But there's no way I'm going there in the winter. But at some point, I'll have to go out there and check it out. But anyway, so that's pretty much a done thing. It's just the specifics on how we're going to structure things, how often, how we're going to structure the show. But I'm sure we can come up with all different segments of the show that are going to be very entertaining. I mean, he's got we could even have a story segment where he goes through and talks about an event that happened. I mean, he can, like I said, he has so much shit to talk about. I think it's going to be a great show, and hopefully we'll get to once a week pretty soon. And maybe he'll end up deciding to start doing it once a week. We'll see how that goes. But either way, regardless of when that happens, and it should happen in September, he's going to be on the show in the next couple weeks. Most likely not this week, but next week. So then that gives me a couple weeks to promote his appearance, because I know he does have a lot of people that even follow him on Facebook because they really admire what he does and have so much respect for what he does. So as do I. So I'll talk about the story about the difference between, and I've mentioned it actually, the difference between these fucking security guards and what he does. But we'll talk a little about that when we get back. So we will be right back after these clips, important clips. So I'd stay tuned for them. And check us out at Nonpartisan, the libertyforall.com.
So earlier in the week, we did a story about a cop in Texas who had placed a woman by the name of Lanessa Espinoza in a chokehold after she refused to give him her identity. Now, they were called to the scene because 10 people were involved in a fight. She happened to be there. She says she was not involved in the fight. She was just in her car and police wouldn't let her leave. And at that point, the cops asked her for her ID. And since she hadn't been lawfully arrested in the state of Texas, she didn't have the obligation to show them the ID. And the cops got really annoyed, and one of them placed her in a chokehold, while the other one told her that she had to delete the video that she had filmed on her phone. Well, it turns out that the cop who put her in a chokehold, Gary Witherspoon, has resigned. He was about to get fired, but his employers gave him the opportunity to resign, and he did so. So it turns out what he did was wrong.
Yes. And
That's
so
a scary-looking dude.
Yeah, she took that. I mean, it was look. A lot of people have given me grief for my position on that. I was saying I think she should have, whether she had a legal right or not. I think it would have been easier, more efficient if she just given her ID. But you see that picture. She's taking a selfie while getting choked.
Mm-hmm. Look, it's not the Eric Gardner situation. I don't know if she's taking a. Okay. And by the way, she wasn't taking a selfie. This is video footage.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you're right. I'm mischaracterizing it. But she is holding the camera. She's the one holding the camera. It's not like she's taking a picture. And Ben Mankiewicz makes a good point. Picture doesn't tell 1,000 words. Pictures lie, right? Mm-hmm. So that picture, she looks like she's smiling. But I'm sure she wasn't smiling. It just happened to have caught her in that 1 second frame, right? But I wanted people to understand the main cop that she had the altercation with is not the one who resigned, okay?
Right. It's
he's
just the
the
cop.
one that got reprimanded for asking her to delete the video, not for being wrong on the facts of the law that she didn't have to show ID if she wasn't arrested. The other guy, like he seems like kind of like a mall cop, honestly. He's an off-duty Texas law enforcement officer, right?
Yeah.
And he was just the one like cranky in the background. And again, to be fair to the cops, they say she did admit to being involved in the fight. She says she didn't. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I'm just giving both sides,
Right.
okay? I'm not sticking up for the cops. They've done 18 different things wrong here. But the chokehold is, of course, unacceptable, no matter how brief it was. And they said that the guy also had other employment issues.
Yeah.
And, I mean, from the whole sense of the video, I thought, this guy's got employment issues.
Yeah.
Right? And so he's now gone, and, you know, it seems like that might have been for the better.
Yeah. Look, cops have the responsibility to de-escalate situations. And in case after case, they are escalating situations unnecessarily, right? So I think that case was, you know, maybe a milder example, but it was still an example of them escalating a situation.
Yeah. And by the way, I still stick to, like, the original cop, he was wrong on the law. I, you know, concede that, and you guys, et cetera. And I'm not talking about the law. I'm talking about it would have been easier if she'd given ID, et cetera. We've gone over that. But I wouldn't have had that guy fired, right? Even though he was wrong on the law. I mean, you want to reprimand him for that? You want to reprimand him for asking to delete the video? I agree with that, okay? But I wouldn't have fired that guy. But this guy got fired because of the chokehold.
Yes.
Okay? And this is obviously a person who's not violent at this point, the woman that you're arresting. So you don't have to go to extreme measures. And if you do, then the cops should look at it internally and go, this is an overreaction. There should be consequences for it.
Also, look, from what I witnessed in that video, I feel like the cops didn't really understand that she was within her legal right to not provide ID there. Maybe it's a good idea.
They clearly didn't know
So
that,
maybe it's a good idea for cops to actually learn what the law is so they can enforce it properly.
If you want my name, I'll give you everything. Who are you?
I don't need to provide that.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
If I'm asking you who you are and why you're videotaping our facility, you have to provide me with some kind of identification. So do you have any identification?
To require identification under the law, you need to be able to articulate a crime that I'm about to commit or I have committed.
Okay. You're going around, you're videotaping our state police facility for no apparent reason, and if I'm asking you who you are, you have to provide me with identification.
I don't have to, no.
It's just like anything else.
No, it's not.
Yes, you do.
I don't.
Yes, you do.
In fact, your public information officer already has dealt with this here, and so has a few other officers, so...
I don't care who's dealt with it. I'm asking you for identification because I want to know who you are right now.
Well,
and I want to know what your reasoning is for videotaping our facility.
Well, first of all, Supreme Court has covered that filming out in public is perfectly legal.
I don't care what the
And that is
Supreme
not a
Court...
suspicion of crime, so therefore you have no suspicion of crime.
Listen, you can cite whatever you want.
Right.
Why are you videotaping? That's what I'm asking right now.
I don't have to answer that.
Well, I want to see a form of identification, identifying who you are, why you're outside my facility right now videotaping us.
I don't have to provide that either.
Why not? Why do you feel that you do not have to perform any form of
Because that's the
identification?
law.
No, it's not. If
Yes,
you're
it
out
is.
here and I want to know why you're videotaping our facility and you have to provide me some form of identification, you just can't come and walk away anytime you want and just come up with your things and fly them over our lot. I want to know who you are and why you're videotaping this right now.
You probably want to get a supervisor or somebody higher up.
Sure, here's my sergeant. He's coming out right now.
Well, and he'll tell you.
Okay, no problem. Hey, Len. He was flying the drone out in front, videotaping. All I'm doing is asking for a form of identification so we can identify who he is. He's refusing.
Go to the first sergeant, not a problem. Not a problem.
He can videotape as much as he wants. We don't have to get any form of identification.
He can videotape, not a problem.
All right.
Okay.
So you were wrong?
Huh?
You were wrong?
Going with my sergeant? Yes, I was.
So you learned something today. That's good.
Okay, don't worry about it. I'll put you off. Have a good day.
You hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry for the inconvenience. Right now with the drones, there's a lot of this. I said sorry for the inconvenience. Right now with the drones, there's a lot of, I guess you could say, I wouldn't say misinformation, but it's an area that we're not used to dealing with. All right?
Well, that's apparent. I've dealt with your troopers already on this.
Yeah, I'm sure you have it. Not a problem. That's why he came out here. I saw that he was talking to you, so.
You probably should educate them a little bit more on it. It's going to be a more...
It's kind of an area that's new to everybody, and until they have legislation on it.
Which there is none.
Right. So sorry for the inconvenience, okay?
Alrighty, have a good one.
Much. How you doing?
What are you up to?
Working. What are you up to?
Yeah, who do you work for?
American News and Information Services.
Yeah, did you identify yourself as a police officer to my gate card?
Police officer? No. As a news
The
guy.
Sheriff's Department sent you out here?
No. So American News and Information Services sent me out here.
Take it out?
That is my ID.
Can you take it out?
That is my ID.
Sure.
I'm on Highway 62.
You're not on Highway 62.
I'm
You're
not?
nowhere near Highway 62.
What highway is?
You're,
oh,
right
this
now
is...
you're on federal property.
Okay. Well, where's the sign that says
Could
it?
you take it out so I can see it?
No. I'm with American News. I haven't committed any crimes.
I'm asking you to identify yourself. Police officer is asking you to identify yourself.
If I haven't committed a crime, sir.
You have actually videotaping my gate? Is this a federal crime?
No, it's not.
Property? Yeah, it is.
No, sir.
Okay, could you
Check
take it
your
out
laws.
so I can see on it? Can
You see
take
it?
it out? So I can
You see it? You see it, sir?
Is it?
Sir, you can't touch me.
Let me
Okay.
see your ID then. California ID.
Hey, buddy. Hey, I need you to just sit tight for a second. All of a sudden, I got these cops here who think that me being on this road's against the law. No trespassing signs posted anywhere, so I haven't broken any laws. They're down there, right? Okay, and it says visitors, right?
California ID, bud.
You have a nice day.
Let me see your Sir.
Sir.
Let me see your
I
California
haven't broken
ID.
any laws.
Sir, let me
Sir.
see your California ID. If you want, I'll get San Bernardino County out here with me,
You
too.
can get them out here.
Okay.
Bring them out. Hey, I'll call you back in a minute.
Let me see your California ID.
I don't have to.
Control T2. Start transferring to my location.
I don't have to.
Okay, that's fine.
By law, you can't interfere with me or
Yeah,
my...
sure I can, sir.
Sir,
Stand right
you
here.
can't touch me.
Stand right here.
Sir, you're going to find yourself facing a lawsuit.
I'm facing this lawsuit.
Okay, sir. See that? That's credentialed media. Don't like that, that's too bad.
Let me see it.
You don't have to.
All right, so right now you're being detained until I find out who you are and why you're taking pictures of my bank.
Hey, guess what? It's none of your business.
Okay?
Check your federal laws. Check the Supreme Court. You better call your command. Matter of fact, you better call your base PIO. That'd be your smartest move to do. Call your base PIO. Now you've been officially told, call your base PIO and check your laws. It's okay. Now you've been told that you might be violating some laws here.
I'm not violating any law.
Got a name? B-A-L-A-T-I-C-O. Okay. You got a name? Peters.
E-T-E-R-S. Did you tell my gate that the Sheriff's Department sent you out here?
Nope.
Why'd they tell me that?
Sheriff's Department didn't send me out
Who do
here.
you work for? Are you a freelance press, or who do you work for?
You get why we're concerned a little bit.
Hey, sir, I could care less. I have rights. I am an American citizen. Matter of fact, I spent several years on this base of Delta Company 3rd AAVs. I know the law, sir. And the law is I haven't broken any laws. And the fact that this man's put his hands on me now twice, he's breaking the law. Okay? You see this?
Yeah, you're with media, I see.
Okay? This is a street that's open to the public, the American public. I'm allowed to be on it. And if you don't like it, that's too bad. After that, have a nice day. Anybody interfering with my movements is subjected to a federal lawsuit.
Well, you get our concern. That's all it is.
Your concern has nothing to do with my rights.
Okay.
Okay? You got that?
I hear what you're saying, sir. I do.
And you're a Hawkins, H-A-W-K-I-N-S. You're not even a Marine. You're just private security. You're private security. You don't even know the laws. We already know you guys don't know the laws. We've already beat you guys 4 times this year.
Who's we? Well, I'm gonna take off.
Oh, now we got more of them. Ooh.
Four
You can't
cars
tell me what crime I committed, sir. You can't detain me.
actually show up
If you know
there.
the law,
4
when a police
cars.
officer asks you for identification, what's the law on that?
You better tell me what law you're detaining me for. You better check out the law on that. That's been ruled on by the Supreme Court. The fact that I'm telling you this stuff should tell you that I'm pretty sharp on what I'm doing.
And right there, sir.
You're a sergeant? You got a lieutenant?
So I asked him for his ID.
I've already put them in their place twice today. Bring them out a 3rd time. Under state law, sir, you can't worry about my safety. 409.5, read it. Hey, sir, I was leaving. I was minding my own business. You guys interfered with me. The fact that he put his hands on me, now you violated my rights. And I'm getting very close to filing a formal complaint. You people keep interfering with me. I got a job to do and I got to go. So you guys all have a nice day.
Who do you work for?
Doesn't matter. You see this? I'm an American citizen.
So am I.
It says, what's it say? Read it. Can you read?
Yeah, can I see it?
What's it say?
It says news media.
Thank you. Have a nice day. And that's the law.
You are listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All Radio with your host, Dave Bourne. Call in at 702-470-7664 or Skype in, username Nonpartisan Liberty for All.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. NonpartisanLibertyForAll.com. Check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. Like us on Facebook at Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Also, End the Government Police is where I focus more on police stories on Facebook. So I don't post every story to every Facebook page. I actually have 4 of them. But the main one for the show is Nonpartisan Liberty for All. And then End the Government Police is the main one for police stories. Although I will sometimes post, depending on what it is. If it's something big, I'll post it to the show page as well. But on the End the Government Police Facebook page, I'll post anything that has to do with police, mainly police stories on there. And then I also have the NPLFA Media and Radio Network page, which is for the network, which right now is a very small network, but I'm trying to expand it. We have 2 shows, and I post anything that has to do with the shows or show news, and the events for the shows are also posted there. For Nonpartisan Liberty for All the events are posted there, but I try to remember to post them also, to share them with the network Facebook page as well. So those were 3 stories. I don't know if they told enough about the first one in Texas. The one that the young jerks were talking about was a girl who claims that she had nothing to do with it, but then they try to say she did, but I don't know. That's irrelevant. Essentially, there was some fight at a fast food place or something like that, and they were just questioning her as a witness and she didn't want to give her ID, and she didn't have to, because in the state of Texas, you don't even have to give your ID unless you're arrested. But she wouldn't have to in another state, other states neither, because she wasn't being detained for a crime. So they had not only arrested her for not giving an ID, they arrested her on what I've got arrested for twice. Once I never even got arraigned. It got dropped even before arraignment, but was the obstruction of an officer, because they can claim you're obstructing their investigation, and they love to do that. It's basically one of their, we're going to arrest you because we feel like it, charges, like disorderly conduct or, those type of bullshit, fucking open-ended. It's so open-ended. It's just saying you interfered with their investigation somehow. However, I don't know what it says in other states, but in the state of Nevada, it actually says you have to have intent. And I went to trial on one of them. I've talked all about it. And I had no intent. Not only that, I ended up with bruises all over me. But that just goes to show how the laws, it's all set up for the government to rule over you and control you, and that's what governments do. That's the purpose of a government, in my opinion. Although if you look up the definition, I've mentioned this numerous times, you look up the definition of government, you will always see control in the definition somewhere. But anyway, the two main things that I want to talk about tonight, and that I talk about regarding the police, is one, that all police are criminals. And that's the article I wrote, that all police are criminals. And for the people who haven't heard this before, I will go through in summary how I come to this conclusion. In the article, I, of course, go through it in detail of why I believe it. And you can disagree, and that's fine, but it does actually make a lot of sense. And it's a logical argument. Now, again, anybody can make a logical argument and disagree with it. It doesn't mean I'm right. It's not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of opinion that I believe all police are criminals. And here is why. Now, my biggest problem with this, or with people's opinions of this, is that they come to their conclusion about police based on either nothing or logic that is not really logic that is a valid argument. So what I mean by that is it doesn't address the issue of police being good or bad. Because when I talk about all police being criminals, it has to do with their job solely that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about their personal lives. And I'm not talking about their interactions when they're off duty. Although there's a lot of cops off duty that do things they shouldn't be doing, but I don't address that because I really don't even need to. I think I've addressed enough and given enough information to come to a logical conclusion. And even I remember there was a guy who had listened to my show a lot, and good guy. I'm friends with him on Facebook. And I guess he ended up getting a job in radio. So congrats to him as a traffic reporter, at least last time I messaged him on Facebook. You know, I don't know him that well. I just casually know him. He called in the show before, and he wanted me on his show at first because I didn't, you know, as I got to know him a little better, not that I know him that well anyway, you know, at first I thought it was kind of weird that, you know, he wanted me to be on his show, and the way he kind of approached my show, like he was studying me for something. He was kind of just looking at different points of view, of political points of view and whatnot and whatever. But I remember when he had called in about this, and the first time I went through it, and he had said, well, I can't see a flaw in your argument as far as it being a logical argument. Now, I don't know that he agreed with me, but his point was that, and another thing, I totally forgot about this. He started getting into things like cop block because of me. He's one of the few people that I can say I influenced in a positive way, in that he started taking notice of what the police were doing. And this was before the government media started covering any of the police shootings. He went to the cop block site, and he ended up, you know, reading articles about what the police were doing, or watch videos or whatever. So that was, I haven't heard that much from people, that things that I've done on the show have influenced them or got compliments. Recently, I got a Twitter message from somebody who had said, you know, thanks for talking about self-ownership, it's important, or something along those lines. So I, of course, tweeted them back and thanked them, because things like that are the reason I do the show. Now, I don't know that was a, you know, I influenced him in any way. I think he knows all about self-ownership, but the fact that I'm talking about it on a internet radio show, even though it's small, but I'm trying to get that out to people, that he was grateful that, hey, that's good that you're trying to do that. So thanks for trying to expose the concept of self-ownership to other people, because I think that's where it really starts. When it comes to freedom and all the concepts of freedom, to me, that's where it really starts, is probably with self-ownership. And I'm not somebody who has read all of these libertarian philosophers, neither. That's one of the differences, I think, between me and a lot of other independent internet radio shows that are freedom-oriented, is that a lot of them will talk about these libertarian philosophers. And to be honest, I probably should read them. But I came up with a lot of these ideas on my own, along with, you know, I would say that listening to Free Talk Live, there was some stuff that I didn't think of before. So I would say there's some influence there. But a lot of the stuff, and I'm not saying it to compliment myself, it's just a lot of these things, they were things that I just believed. I just didn't explain them in the same way Murray Rothbard or I can't think of any other libertarian philosophers right now, but I would talk to people who would refer to a lot of these libertarian philosophers, and I'm not I know the names, but I've never read any of their books. Which again, I probably should, because it would probably help me. If anything, it's not going to hurt. But most of the things that I believe are things that I believe because I believe them. I don't know any other way to explain it. Not to say that somebody read a book and they didn't believe it before and then they did, but I wasn't influenced by in that way. I just kind of came to my own conclusions based on my life and how I grew up and how things had happened in my life. And I would say, out of all of the, there's not a lot of positive things, I guess I'd say, about my father, who died about 5 years ago. But I would, when I look back now, I would probably say that he was a libertarian, not a, hardcore, no government type libertarian, but, he thought all drugs should be legal. There were some other things like that. He didn't like the police too much. He, I think, had issues with authority, which I definitely did. And I think that's where some of my ideas started, where I not having issues with authority because I wanted to have issues with authority, but questioning authority. And it started with him, and that's why I had so many problems with him, because it was, do this. And it was, well, why? Why do I have to do this? And parents, well, because I said so. And, of course, I talked about on Thursday, I believe, one of the second, well, I wouldn't rank these first and second. I'd put them both together. But one of the other most important things is the way you bring up your kids, I believe. If we want to get to freedom, that's one of the most important things. And the way things are going, that is not going in a positive route. But back to police. The way I came up with, I was talking about the guy that I knew. He had said, about the argument that it's, a logical argument. I think his words were, well, I can't come up with any, fault in that argument. And the problem I have with people that disagree with me or say all police are good or most police are good is they don't base it off of anything. And I was saying before that I'm only looking at police on the job. I'm not looking at their personal lives. So I've noticed that the majority of people who defend police or say most police are good or only some police are bad, it's the bad apples, are people that are either related to or friends with police. Or you have those, psycho hardcore nationalists that the government can do no wrong type people that love the military, love the police. And I'm not going to talk about the military, but that I would look at more as a problem or a negative than a positive. And when I look at, again, getting to a point of freedom, I haven't even got to the military, because if you have the military that you have now they could bring them right in if they needed to. So I honestly don't believe in a standing army, as did the founding fathers. And these bases all over the world, thousands of bases. I mean, that's a whole nother show, the military industrial complex. But as far as the most important ways to achieve freedom, and looking at the most important things, the military does come into play at some point in there. There's no way it can't. Because the only difference really, and this is how I think they want it, because they want to federalize the police, is that, well, the military is a lot better trained, obviously, probably smarter in certain areas, not in general, because when they take, the average 18-year-old off the street, I mean, so I don't know that. I would say that the military is smarter. They are smarter in certain areas, but there was that joke, military intelligence is an oxymoron. But the military, again, can definitely get in the way of achieving a true freedom and liberty. So the difference, I think, with the military, though, than compared to the police, is I think a big percentage of the military is more supportive of true freedom, the freedom that I'm talking about, not the bullshit freedom that they talk about in the military themselves, that there's more people that would support or, throw down their guns and not turn them against the people. So the police seem to be more, I don't know if evil is the word, but definitely worse than the military. I could see a lot of the military, again, just saying, if they were ordered to do certain things, saying, fuck it, I'm not doing it. Most of the police, I don't see them doing that. Now, whether that's a matter of the type of people that are attracted to the job, and a lot of people in the military just kind of being forced to join the military because they don't have a lot of options, or for whatever reason, I see a difference in the type of people in general that are in the military than that are in the police. I think you'd have a much better chance talking to the military and getting them to see a lot of these ideas than the police. So anyway, my summary of why all police are criminals, and of course the fourth one is the one that's really undeniable and that does it, is, of course, my personal experience with police. I've talked a little about it. I've been, choked by an officer at 16, arrested for things that I didn't do just because I pissed the police officer off, and or he didn't like my demeanor, was exactly what he said. And I wasn't even that bad. I was just kind of like, all of a sudden a cop just comes up to you. It's like when you're minding your own business, are you supposed to be happy and, hey, officer, after having all these bad experiences, had bruises all over me. I mean, I've had too many experiences with police. That's just going into a couple. So all my personal experiences confirm that. Then, of course, there's other people's. talking with other people, their stories, and people that work with police, and them telling me information as well. And then, of course, all the independent reporting now, videos, research by groups like Killed by Police, where now you can see how many people are getting killed by police, or at least around how many. I would add to that number probably 10 to 20% that they are either missing or that are just not being reported, period. Because usually, no matter what, it will be reported by the local news if someone is killed by a cop. They can't ignore it. And it's never a top story, which is fucked up. But it won't be a national story. But I'm sure there's ones that never get reported, and there's police that murder people and the bodies disappear. Don't tell me that it doesn't happen. And in Las Vegas, hey, my house that I'm in right now, I rent, so it's not my house, but there could be bodies under the fucking house. Who knows? From the old days in Vegas, because this house isn't that old. So I don't know I wonder where most of the bodies got buried and how many they actually recovered, or how many they didn't recover, and where they buried them. I would assume, though, that if they built something over it, especially because you can't dig that deep into desert dirt, because you'll hit rock after a while. And I know when people were burying people in the desert, they weren't blasting through rock. So I wonder how many bodies have been found building houses or building businesses or any kind of buildings since then. So, and of course, my last one is the one that says all, because the first three do not say all. It just says the majority. It makes you come to the conclusion that the majority of cops are fucked up, that the majority of cops are criminals. But the last one is the fact that they kidnap people. And kidnapping is a crime. And when you kidnap somebody and lock them in a cage, a lot of times for not just for the night until they're bailed out, but for years because of that arrest. So because of that arrest you made, that resulted in that person being in there for that time. And the judges are culpable. That's another thing that people tend to forget, that the judges, the politicians, the whole system is just as guilty as the police are for what they do. But the reason I call it kidnapping, it would be in instances of nonviolent crimes, drugs, of course, being the biggest one that comes to mind. So arresting someone for possessing something is not a crime except in the eyes of the government, who, in my opinion, doesn't even have the authority to make that a crime. And up until 1914, they never passed a law that told anyone what they could put in their body. And that was, 1914 was opium, when they had banned opium. Not banned it, but they made it so you had to pay a tax and get a prescription, and they put it in their control, essentially. So that was 1914. Before that, you could buy it off the shelves. And the problems, and I've done shows on this and wrote articles on this. You can find the articles again at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. But the damage they do by making something like opium illegal is so bad that alone the government should feel disgusted in themselves. But that's another issue, and maybe after I finish this part, I'll talk about that for a second. But the kidnapping, the reason why I call it kidnapping is because as a human, you have the right to put whatever you want in your body. And the government, quote unquote, believed that until 1914. Now, again, I think the governments, when they start, this is my philosophy on governments in the summary of my philosophy on governments, which, again, I've talked about before. The reason why I always say I've talked about this before is because I don't want people to think like I forgot that I've talked about it before, because I don't forget that I've talked about what I've talked about. So anyway, but hopefully there's new listeners along with listeners that listen every night as well. And I didn't talk about it exactly how I'm talking about it now. It was in a different context or the same context, but in a show that mentioned different things. So it's not I'm not redoing the same show. But anyway, as a human, you have the right to do that. And nobody has the right to tell you. I mean, people can tell you, advise you, or say you shouldn't be doing that, but kidnap you and lock you in a cage for choosing what to put in your body. The government does not have the authority. The only authority the government has is that they have a bunch of weapons and a bunch of people that are willing to use them on you. That's the only authority the government has. Otherwise, they don't have shit. But just because they make a law does not mean that they are not violating your rights. All a law is a bunch of fuckhead politicians got together and said, a criminal law, or any law for that matter, but, we happen to be talking about criminal laws, but I'll be specific to criminal laws. There's a bunch of fuckhead politicians got together and said, this should be illegal and there should be a penalty for it. And in the case of drugs, the federal government as well as state governments did it. I don't know exactly. That's one thing. I do know a lot about the history of drugs, but that's one thing I don't know. I know that 1914 law was a federal law, but how the states followed, because the states were like now, if you get arrested for drugs, it's not a federal charge usually unless you're selling, huge quantities or something. But if it's just possession, it's not a federal charge. But it's just a bunch of fucking politicians getting together and, having most likely somebody in their staff write a bill and then the rest of them voting on it and saying, yes, this should be illegal. That's all it is. Not only that, it violates the 10th Amendment because drugs should have been left up to the states, and it violates, I believe, the 9th Amendment, which pretty much says if we didn't say in the Constitution that you have this right, it doesn't mean that you do, that you don't. So it means you have a bunch of other rights that they didn't mention in the Constitution, a bunch of other freedoms. And to put what you want in your body is one of them. And I think that's why prior to 1914, they didn't go after what you put in your body. Now, again, going back to my definition of governments, I don't know if I went through the whole thing, but I believe that governments, essentially, they just slowly take over and get to the point where they control everything and everyone. But they have to do it over generations and over a long time. Well, they don't have to. I mean, in other countries, they've done it a lot quicker. In the United States, it took them a long time. So things like this, it did take them a long time. However, they might have just not thought of it beforehand or whatever. And it gave them so much power to invade your life. It gives so much power to the police. That's the other thing with drugs, and I did a whole show on this, is that drugs being illegal gives so much power to the police because all they have to say is, I smelled marijuana, and then they can search your car. You know, or whatever. Things like that. You know, I smelled marijuana coming outside of the door at your house, so we have the right to search your house or something. So they use it for so many things. There's been people, I've talked about all this, there's been people killed over drug raids, little kids because they went to the wrong house, people that didn't know, I'm talking about no-knock raids, people that have shot back because they didn't know it was police. It's just read, and I say this every single time, read The Rise of the Warrior Cop by Radley Balco. It's definitely something that I think everybody should read. But all cops arrest people for drugs or possession of things that there's laws that say they can't possess. You can't be a cop and get away with not arresting somebody for that. It's not possible. Unless you use discretion and didn't ever arrest anybody for those things, but you're not going to get away with doing that. Even if you're a detective now, a homicide detective, you did at one time do that. So you are a criminal. You kidnapped people, and not only did you kidnap them, but you lock them up in a cage like a fucking animal, and most of them, well, it depends, but some of them, I'm sure, went to prison and were locked up and treated like animals for months or years. And somebody that can do that, and they know going in that they're going to have to do that. So somebody that can do that, to me, is not a good person. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't treat their family well. They don't have friends that think they're really good people. It has nothing to do with any of that. But to compare apples to apples, the analogy there, you have to compare police on the job to police on the job. Not, I know this person personally and they're a good guy, to what they do on the job. It doesn't work that way. So just because you know somebody personally doesn't mean that they're not out there violating people's rights when they go to work. And this is also why there was a picture posted of them playing with kids with super soakers. I've seen pictures of them playing basketball with kids. And then the cops on Facebook asked, how come, cop block or police accountability groups never put the good things that cops do? Well, number one, they're a police accountability group. They're not out there to do that. But the other reason is that has nothing to do with their job. It's not part of their job. It's something they're doing. Yeah, they have their uniforms on, and they might even be on the clock, which would be worse. And, of course, it's all propaganda, because if they were really doing it because they wanted to, and they might enjoy doing it, but you wouldn't see pictures of it. You wouldn't hear about it. But and I wonder if they're on the clock when they're doing it too, because that would be pretty fucked up. And they probably are. But anyway, that's not comparing apples to apples. Now, if a cop lets somebody go for drugs, that's doing something good in the terms of what I'm talking about. Because I'm talking about their job. So within their job, if they catch somebody with something that the government says they should not possess, then they let them go. That's comparing apples to apples, and you can say they did something good. So you find me the cops that do that and the articles of that, I would mention that on my Facebook pages in a minute. But you're not going to find that. Because one, I mean, they're not going to admit it anyway. And usually they don't do that. So I know they'll post like, oh, because cops that defend the Second Amendment. And a lot of them, it's full of shit, because all the sheriffs in Nevada signed that they support the Second Amendment. I even had cops that, when I got arrested, I had my gun in my car, which is legal, but they're like, yeah, we support the Second Amendment. So it sounded like such bullshit. They're told to tell you that, depending on where you live. I'm sure in Massachusetts, they're not told to tell you that. So, briefly, I said before the break, and I didn't get to it, is I mentioned before the break the difference between Dale's group, the Detroit Threat Management Center, and security guards. And there's a huge difference, which is hard to explain, but insecurity, I mean, and everybody's run into these people. And this is something that Dale wants to make sure that people understand this as well, that his team and his company is not like, the security guards at the casinos in Las Vegas or the security guards at the mall. And they're not. And he can show that through, video and training and all of this stuff as well. But initially, and I don't know if this is, because we didn't get into this, if this has happened before, that people have said that to him, that mentioned, security guards, like, the mall security or whatever. I don't know, but these are, and that's why he calls it the Threat Management Center, that they manage threats. I had mentioned, now I forget what I had mentioned, but like it was personal something, like personal, not personal security, but I don't remember. but I thought it was good. But there's a huge difference. These guys are like Secret Service or something, more that type of security compared to the mall security who, you know, they pay $10, $12 an hour to these idiots. You know, it's not like that. All his people are dedicated. They're trained. I mean, he's got rid of so many people because they didn't have they had a certain mentality that did not fit in with what he's trying to do. So he got rid of them because they did not buy into what he's trying to do. But these are heavily trained people that would give their life to protect somebody else's. So the word security guard should not even come into it, period. You know, it's hard when you talk about, I talk about getting rid of the police, and that's the other part, the government police is what I call it, and replacing them with things like Dale's company, and not in the sense of the government pays for it, that people pay for it themselves, and that they help the people that can't afford it. And that's what they actually do now. They charge, I mean, they have contracts with all these different corporations and probably, you know, developments and things like that, housing developments and richer people, or maybe with like an HOA, or I never asked specifically. I know that they have contracts with people and they protect houses. I don't know if they're doing a lot of individual protection or more through, say, an HOA and they protect a community. But they are not security like you would think of. They're not security guards. So that's where, you know, he had said that that's why he calls them, you know, threat management, because they manage threats, which I think is a good name for the company. But to think of or talk about an individual that's a member, I don't know what you'd call them. And that's where maybe he has a name. I didn't ask that, you know, a threat management specialist or something, or whatever, as opposed to, you know, security guard. But that's the type of security that I'm talking about, not the security that there is now. Now, I know that he's really expensive, but what would happen is if there's no police, the price would go way down because the demand would go way up. So, you know, the corporations, you would still get a lot of money from those, but for just a regular person, the prices would probably go way down because you'd have so many, you know, everybody would need, not everybody, because some people would choose, hey, I'll take care of myself. But everybody in general would need some sort of security. And that's where you have competition. You don't have a monopoly on security like you do now, or a monopoly on force where you just have the police. And, you know, as I said before, I don't have all the answers and how you deal with everything. But the most important thing is keeping people safe and making sure that they're protected. And that's where the threat management comes in. It's the threats to people and managing those threats and managing in a way, and this is how they operate, where the threats that they manage don't get killed neither. They don't carry guns. They did up until 2015, but now they don't even carry guns. So now, if it was a situation where there were no police and everything was security, maybe some things would have to change. I don't know. You know, you need to be more prepared just in case of certain things. But I think for the most part, where you had all these competing security companies, I think long term it would be the best thing. And it's also, what do you want as far as what is worse? So no matter what, there is no perfect system. With police, you're going to have all the issues that we have now, and then some. And most people don't even know about those. They know a little from government media. Some people got killed, but it goes way beyond that. So it's, which would you rather? And in a system of private security, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be you know, there is no, what do you call it? A utopia. There is no utopia. However, if you do other things along with that, like totally legalize drugs, well, there you eliminate a whole bunch of crime anyway, and the need for probably half of the police at least. And then you do things like loosen gun laws in many of the states so people can protect themselves. Then everyone has an actual reason to have a gun, and then that bullshit like no one has a reason to actually have an AR-15. And then you don't have that kind of resolves that issue, as well as people can buy whatever guns they want. And really, they should be able to anyway. As I mentioned, the checks and balances and the separation of powers, that really, it's the people that should be the checks and balances and the final separation of power. And the only way to do that is to be as armed as the police, because obviously that one didn't work out. The government just colludes with each other, and the people are up against a major force with automatic weapons and tanks and all of this stuff. So people really should have all of that anyway. So when the main goal is that people have safety and protection and that sense of well-being. I think that's part of it too, of course. I mean, whether you're actually safe or not, and I think we're going to go till 9:30 tonight. Whether you're actually safe or not, it is kind of irrelevant in a way, even though that's what we want. But I'm saying for a person, it's that feeling of them feeling safe and protected. And of course, we don't just want them to feel safe and protected. We want that to be the reality as well. But if people were to say, if you were to ask people the purpose of the police, now their wanted purpose. So I don't want to confuse things, because I was talking to Dale about this, and I don't think he totally understood what I meant because the way I explained it. Now, the police's job is not to serve and protect. That's a bunch of bullshit. They don't keep people safe. They don't protect people. Their job is to throw people in jail and generate revenue and fill the, private prisons and all that shit. But what people want from police, or what people want in society in general, I guarantee you the majority of people are going to tell you that they want safety and protection. They want their family, and I talked about this on Thursday, they want their family to feel safe. Not to just feel safe, as I was saying earlier, they want that feeling, but it to be a fact as well, for their family to be safe, not just feel safe. So they want to be able to feel safe and protected. And that's what I think, along with their property, of course, and they want their property to feel, they want to feel secure in their property as well. And part of the reason, I remember Dale telling me a story about somebody, he's saying hi to someone and them not saying hi because they thought he was a cop, and he had to explain to them that he's not a cop. And the fact that they thought he was, once they knew he wasn't, changed their opinion of him, meaning that that's the other thing. And that's why I always took security over police, although the problem with other security is that you have the wannabe cops. You have the security who, has the attitude and acts tough. And sometimes they're worse than the actual police. They just don't have the power. So that's my problem with them. But assuming you had people like Dale's people, security that really their goal is just to protect people, people don't worry about the other stuff. So, like, the Detroit Threat Management is not going around looking for fucking drugs or looking to report people to the police that are doing drugs or getting involved in any, they're doing their job of making sure that people are protected, that there are no threats to their property, there are no threats to them physically, and that's what they're looking at, because they aren't cops, they don't arrest people, They protect people. And that's the mentality. And this is why I think the people, Dale has a lot of libertarian fans, I guess I'd call them. I don't know if fans is the right word, but they're sort of fans. People that have seen, because Cop Block went to the Detroit Threat Management Center and Dale showed them around, and they filmed all this video and posted it online, and that's how I heard about them. And that's how I developed a lot of respect for them as well. And then I got in contact with them, and then I talked to Dale. I had mentioned that when he was first on the show, I had talked to him for a while when I did my pre-interview, and then I talked to him on the show, and then I even talked to him after, because he just has so much to say and so many things that have happened. Whether it's the buildup of the company, all the incidences. I mean, he has 20 years of stories and experiences with this Detroit Threat Management Center. So, I mean, that's why it'd be great to have him on the air to have his own show, whether he's talking about stories of things that happen or whatever. I had him on the air before on my show as an interview to interview him, and then we'll have him on again in a couple weeks to talk to him about stuff. Not so much as an interview, sort of a like half interview, more just have more of a conversation, because we already did the interview, so more of a conversation. And we'll talk about more stuff that we didn't talk about the first time he was on, and we'll kind of summarize what we did. And I'll go back and listen to the original interview, which you can go to Spreaker.com and find it there. You might be able to find it other places, but I know 100% that it's there because every show is there. So you can just look for Dale Brown Threat Management Center. I'll actually find the episode number while I'm on air and give that to everybody if you want to listen to it. But I don't want to spend the whole next half hour on that, even though that is a big part of what I'm talking about regarding the police and regarding freedom, because that's the alternative that we're looking at right now. Now, it might not be exactly, I'm sure, Dale's had 20 years of experience, so I'm sure it's pretty well refined. But there may be, things constantly change. So I'm sure during that time he constantly refined processes and ways to, like, for example, they got rid of guns, and that was recently. So there's things that may change or may not change. And then, of course, as much as I like Dale, you don't want that to be the only security place in an area. Once you get to the point, if we get to a point where there's no police, and hopefully we will, we wouldn't want that to be the only place in the area. We would want there to be other security or threat management firms that followed the same mentality, definitely. And because if they didn't, they go out of business, I believe. And Dale kind of disagreed. I feel like if they were shooting people, that they go out of business. Now, he thought the opposite, but I think most people would appreciate what he's doing. Now, when you experience all the stuff that he did, and I don't even know, half the stories. I know some of them from talking to him, but I'm sure there's plenty of them, that I'm sure that affects your view on people, and maybe he doesn't have the, same, not that I'm not optimistic at all, actually. I think there's a lot of fucked up people. But when it comes to actual criminals, I think that's a small percentage. Criminals that commit crimes against other people. I'm not talking about people that do drugs and stuff like that. And one of the things we had talked about that is one of the hardest things to deal with, I think, and police deal with it all the time, is domestic violence and that whole thing. So that, of course, is always an issue. But we would want, and when I say we, I'm not saying him, because, of course, he would want to, make as much money as possible and serve as many people as possible. And I definitely want to see a Las Vegas Threat Management Center. But, I mean, in terms of competition, just so there's other, it forces him to be better. It forces him to be the best that he can be. And, of course, he's not going to be around forever. So you want, and hopefully, them to take that same philosophy, that positive philosophy of protection and caring about lives, and not be these crazy mercenaries or anything like that. But then, you have competition. You can't just do whatever you want and, those type of things. So, but the reason why I talk about it so much is because it's a major part of ending the police. Because I don't believe that you just get rid of the police and then there's nothing. And what's funny is a lot of people think that when you say we need to get rid of the police, that you're saying we need to have nothing. And of course, I've never said that, but they assume, oh, if we didn't have police, then we'd be screwed in this and that, because they think you'd have nothing. But that is not the case. So when it comes to getting rid of the police altogether and going to, and again, I don't have all the answers, but when I look at, as I said, no matter what, you're not going to have a utopia. I think there's always going to be issues and nothing's going to be perfect. But I'd gladly take a setup where you have arbitration, you have competing security companies, and that's how you deal with things. And I actually have, if I can find it, a clip that goes through and explains that, their idea, kind of sums it up. And it's a good kind of starting point on how you can have free market security. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, because that's where it goes through having competing security companies and then how that would work. And that's just their idea. Again, when you get people together and come up with different ideas and those type of things, obviously a lot of people feed, like I'm somebody who comes up with my own ideas, but also feeds off of other ideas as well. So there may be an idea that people feed off of and, add to and have the freedom to do that and get rid of I mean, that's a big thing too, is getting rid of patents and copyrights and all of that. That I wouldn't put as one of the most important paths to freedom, as I've talked about to this point, because today's show is of course about the police, but I also mentioned in the notes that I was going to talk about a little about Thursday show as well, because it kind of fits in, and I didn't really finish up everything I was talking about. So let me actually get into some of that. So after, well, I would say before getting rid of the police, I think there's a number of things that would have to be done. And the problem is, of course, is I don't believe any of this is going to be done through the system. It has to be done through non-compliance and the people. And we have to take things into our own hands. We really do. And now what that exactly means, I don't know. But, I mean, if you get a bunch of people together, as I said, and get them to not comply, they can't arrest everybody. They just really can't do anything. Those laws kind of go away. And the same, and the other thing that I had mentioned is the concept of making the government irrelevant as much as you can, which in a lot of circumstances is hard, because we can make the police irrelevant as possible, meaning we don't call police, and we can start a whole thing where nobody calls police, and we get a certain amount of people that actually go along with it in a specific city and try it, in a city, like a city like Detroit, for example, where they have the threat management center. But to start that and then go from there and start taking all of these parts of the government and not using them. And again, it's hard. Like with police, you can't totally get police out of your life. They're going to come up and question you or harass you or any of those things. So it's hard to you can't do the same thing you would do with a business that you didn't want to deal with anymore. So I'm talking about more of a boycott of the government, but you can only boycott so much. I mean, if you think of your daily life, I mean, really, how much of it do you need the government for? Or your life in general? I mean, besides roads, which that's the thing. Well, how would we have roads? And I remember fucking hearing that recently. There are other ways to get roads built besides fucking government. So, and that's just a whole nother long conversation that I'm not going to go into. But, so let's say that we besides roads, what else do you on a normal day use the government for? Now, some people, it's their whole life. I mean, they're on welfare or, something else, public assistance, whatever, and they need the government for everything. And that gives the government more control over them as well. But if I think about my life, again, besides roads, there's nothing from the government that I need or use. Nothing. And out of those things, because you could say trash, but trash doesn't have to be that way. Trash could be privatized. And when I say, just again to clarify, as I did on Friday or Thursday, that there's a difference between the government contracting, like they're doing with the prisons, where they're paying the prisons, and something being private. Private means that you pay for it. So if trash was private, that would mean that everybody paid for their trash. Just like if we went to a private security or a threat management scenario, it would be private, no government money. It would be people paying for it. And when you take things like taxes, and because I'm for more moving towards, no government. So if you take taxes and all of these things out, people are more apt to help other people. So, and when they know the government is not helping them, you'd see a lot more charity. You'd see a lot more people getting help. You'd see a lot more of that as well. So either people would be taken care of, whether these companies provided services for free or other people paid for it, or neighborhoods came up with a plan where they all chipped in for their neighborhood or whatever. It would get taken care of. Now, again, people, when I start going into the stuff, ask me the what ifs. You have the what ifs, and fucking what if is one of the worst phrases I've ever heard, because that's what government uses to justify about 90% of what they do. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if? So it's, well, what if this happened? And again, I don't have all the answers. I wouldn't be building a society by myself or transitioning society by myself, obviously. It would be a lot of people. It would be everybody, really, because the whole point is for people to have the freedom to live their lives how they want to be able to do what you want without being spied on, without being harassed by police, without having government in every aspect of your life. People keep forgetting that too. I remember, I mean, I was at the movies, Sunday, to see my movie, Jason Bourne. So in the movie, or before the movie, they had a preview for Snowden, which comes out September 16th, actually a couple of days before my birthday. And I think about how it even goes beyond what he's come out with. There's no doubt. I mean, but people don't even really talk about that shit anymore. I don't even think it was a question really in any of the debates. And if anything, it was, we need to get more vigilant. We need to spy on people more. I mean, and they didn't use those words, but that's essentially what they were saying. And it's crazy. I mean, Donald Trump, I don't know who's worse when it comes to freedom, Hillary or Trump. They're probably just as bad. That they're both totally anti-freedom. Neither one of them said anything that had to do with more freedom or more liberty. It was just the opposite. They want more laws. They want more spying. They want more going after people. And that's where things are going. It's a lot worse than I could even put into words. And of course, most people, the average person is like, whatever, that's bullshit. That's just conspiracy. Everything is not great, but okay. You know, the economy's a little fucked up, but whatever. But I'm not, none of the things I say, for the most part, and if I do, I'll say more that this is what I think, or this is something, you know, my idea or my perception, or what I think of it. But most of this stuff is out there. We all know that the government spies on everybody, that they suck up all your data. We all know that, and nobody seems to give a fuck. If you go out and look at government documents, you can find all this other shit out. I mean, it's there. It's unclassified documents are out there. I mean, the connection to Al-Qaeda, to ISIS. I mean, this is a country who murdered a president. So what they did, in my opinion, is they started a government in order to get everybody on board. There's certain things they had to do. But the end game, when you start a government, it's like a board game almost. And you have the start, and you start government. In the end, winning the game is taking over everything and controlling everything. It's 1984. The movie, for people who don't know, who are young, I guess. But that's what it is. And it's getting closer and closer to that point. It's like they started at the beginning, and they, you know, right away start taking away freedoms and more. And then once they hit, you know, the 20th century, it started to speed up. And in the past, you know, after 9/11, it really started speeding up. Even after the Oklahoma City, and after the crackdown on, you know, the start of the drug war, or after Kennedy was killed. You can look at all these points in history. And a lot of people like to think that this just started when Bush became president or when Obama became president. That's when freedoms became under attack. No, freedoms became under attack when the government started in the first place. The government was overthrown from the Articles of Confederation. But even that, I mean, I think that gave more freedom, but it's still the Constitution or any government never, there's no government that I know of that is truly free, because you can't be truly free if you have rulers, first of all. But even if you wrote the greatest document, if I wrote a 1-paragraph thing that said do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt anybody, and got a little detailed in as far as, you know, property crimes and crimes against people, and that's about it. And then if you do those, this is what is going to happen, and created a small system for that. I guarantee you that whoever is administrating that, the politicians, the people in power, are going to add to that. And in 20 years, 100 years, the reality of it is going to be totally different, just like with the Constitution. And that's what happened. When you give people power over you, they take advantage of it, and they try to take as much power as possible. I don't remember how many times I've said that on this show. And partially it's because it's like drilling it into people's heads, because it's the truth. Politics is power. Politicians are not just about the money. Millionaires and billionaires are not just about the money. How much money can you fucking spend until it's like, I don't need any more money? It's not it gets to a point where it's not about money anymore. It's about power and control and being able to do whatever you want, and looking at people like they're ants and you own them, which the government believes that they own everybody. So, of course, legalization of drugs would be a huge thing. I'm not optimistic that that's going to happen, because it takes a lot of power away from the police, along with so many agencies. Now, if they do legalize it, they're going to do it in a way that gives them some sort of power, like they've done with cannabis. They're going to tax the fuck out of it. They're going to regulate the fuck out of it. And that's the scary part, I think, to me, is even if they get to a point where all drugs are legal, which I can't see that happening. No politician has ever even said that. No politician, except maybe one or two, have said even to legalize cannabis. So it's hard to even get a politician to say that cannabis should be legal. Never mind, heroin. So how far away are we from that? I don't know, but we're not as close as some people may think. And then you have, which I've mentioned, the people that want to still control, but they base it off the drug. So they say, well, we don't think marijuana is that bad, so we're fine with it being legal. But heroin is, so we want to keep it illegal. Even Portugal, with their quote-unquote legalization, it's not exactly legal. It's more decriminalized for certain amounts. But they still go after drug dealers. They don't sell it in stores, as far as I know. And that kind of defeats the purpose of a lot of it. So I've talked, of course, a lot about the legalization of drugs and wrote about it as well. And I'm still not done with that series. I think I'm on part either 5 or 6 of why the drug war and why drugs should go back to the way they were before the 1920s, which is basically you put them on the shelf at the fucking pharmacy or grocery store or whatever, and people buy them. Because what they're doing to people, I mentioned earlier, I started to get into it, like, you know, with heroin. They'll blame, heroin is, you know, such a bad thing and whatnot. And really what they're doing is they're driving people towards heroin by not giving prescriptions for painkillers. It's things like that the government does that's just ridiculous. Or they're forcing people to pay more money and go to the street for things, and it's crazy. And they can't not know what they're doing. I think they know exactly what they're doing. So, well, we went a half hour over, and I think that's all the time we have for tonight. And I still didn't get to some of the things I wanted to get to. It's doing a 2-hour show now, and this one was 2.5. It's still not enough. I don't know. I always just have a lot to say, I guess. But we'll be back tomorrow, so be sure to tune in. Of course, the same time, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. We'll be joined by Ken Schortgen to talk about the economy and geopolitics. So, and be sure to check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. Or just type in the Detroit Threat Management Center on Facebook and like them. They have a Facebook page now. And we will see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
And all that was really on there, I swear, every story, and I'm not exaggerating, and I did fall asleep, but I saw the preview of what was going to be on Anderson Cooper, and every story was about Donald Trump. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not nothing. Literally every single story that they previewed. You know, again, I fell asleep, so I didn't actually see every single story. But when I woke up, when I was up, and when I saw the previews of the stories, every story was about Donald Trump. Why that is, I don't know. It ranges from him having, I mean, it's ridiculous stories too. The first story I actually saw was, and you're not going to believe this, so I think about tonight we're going to be talking all about police, and most of the show or part of the show is based on an article I wrote. And then we're going to continue with some of the stuff we talked about Friday regarding how to achieve freedom, what pertains to the police. But I think about during that time, the story they did was Trump eats fast food with a knife and a fork, which is funny because I do that too. And not maybe fries, but like I'll eat a hamburger with a knife and a fork because I'll put a lot of ketchup on it. And if I eat that shit, if I pick that shit up, it will probably leak out somewhere and I'm a slob. And yeah, so I eat most fast food, even chicken. I eat chicken with a knife and a fork. So I'm the same way, actually. It's not a arrogant thing or anything like that. I don't remember when I started doing that. I think it started with the hamburger because of the amount of ketchup or barbecue sauce or whatever I'm putting on there. And then it went from there to, everything else. So they're doing a story on Trump while I don't know how many people today died or were murdered by police. It's usually 3 to 4, but who knows if there were any unarmed people or mentally ill people that had a knife, or I didn't look at killed by police today, or it doesn't even have to be today, in the past week. That stuff that they could be covering, that's important, or how many people's freedoms got violated. I mean, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about fucking Donald Trump's eating habits. And, the other stuff went from all the way from talking about Paul Ryan and their relationship and them endorsing each other to fucking, what else did they preview? I don't even remember. I remember the Paul Ryan story that they can't endorse each other. And the funny thing is that no matter what you believe, now, I believe the election is rigged, and it's been that way for a long time. Maybe going back, almost to the beginning. And when I say almost to the beginning, maybe not the first 5 presidents or something. I don't know. Who knows? But because I know people will get really insulted. The forefathers, they didn't rig the election. Well, Washington basically wasn't elected. I don't know as far as I know, I don't know the whole story behind that, how Washington became president. I don't recall him being elected, but I could be totally wrong on that. So I feel that I should know that, but I do not. I know that after that, they, of course, had elections, and they had a lot smaller base. But even if you don't believe that elections are rigged, it doesn't really matter, because you know how many people are in the country, you know how many people vote, and to think that your vote counts, and you've had 2 candidates put in front of you by, first of all, you had to be a Republican or a Democrat, and the same thing, there are at least 100 million people that participated in that process, like your vote means anything, and the process is really controlled by the political party. So the political parties put these 2 candidates in front of you. So even if you don't believe that it's rigged, which I don't know how you can't, from what I just said. I mean, the political parties putting, at least to that point. But if you don't believe that it's rigged regarding whether Hillary or Donald Trump are going to win, and even you do realize that, I don't know the exact number because it all depends on the voter turnout, but you do realize that there's going to be at least 150 million people voting, and that your vote really doesn't mean shit. So who really gives a fuck what these people do and say? And it's just a waste of time and attention to get everybody focused it's not even every 4 years, because I mean the election cycle starts almost 2 years out really they start to talk about it, then maybe a year and a half is when they really start to get into it. And then, of course, now once the convention starts, but even before that, I mean, when you have all the debates going on with the nominees and all of this shit, so it takes up so much coverage of at least national news that there's so many other things that you don't hear about, that get bumped, that are just, they consider meaningless, which in the big scheme of things are way more important to know about than fucking what Trump uses to eat a piece of fried chicken or a hamburger, and that he actually eats fast food, even though he's, a billionaire. Maybe to show the elites eat fast food, that they, because the whole conspiracy that, well, the elites don't eat, that stuff. But I don't think, or Donald Trump's not part of the real elites that run everything. He's not, wealthy enough or important enough. Donald Trump reminds me of, he's like a clown. The fact that he's even in the fucking whole election process is just, it's kind of funny to me. But whoever wins, even if he does win, it just means that, like I said before, the powers that be made a deal with him. And it actually would work out better for them, because then they could say, oh, look, things aren't rigged because, look, Donald Trump won, and it would give them something else, a quote-unquote outsider, and they'd be able to claim that, oh, yeah, the outsiders can win and all of this shit. And then Donald Trump would come in there and do all the same stuff that they want done anyway. And so would Hillary. I mean, it's basically, there's, is there a couple things that, are different, that are the irrelevant shit that they use to show that they're different? Yeah. But pretty much they're not. Anyway, I want to save a lot of that. As I had mentioned on Friday, I need to do a show regarding that, so I don't want to waste it all right now on a totally different show. So on Friday or Thursday, the last show we've done, we had talked about freedom and how, based on, what's going on, what can we do to change things and actually maintain the freedoms that we still have, which aren't many, if any at all, and to actually get some true freedom. And a lot of it had to do with the police, although the police being essentially dogs. I like to call them dogs more than puppets or other stuff, because dogs, they're bitches, the female dogs, but it's more insulting, I guess, because that's really what they are. And I had the opportunity to, I was talking to somebody today who's, works a lot with police, and was telling me just more shit and about how fucked up they are. And it's just really people have no idea, none, even with all of, and I still don't either, even with all the stuff that I believe I know, I still, don't have any idea how fucked up it really is, because it's more fucked up than they say it is, and that gets reported on, and all the stuff that doesn't get reported on. Even though what's even more fucked up is there is so much that does get reported on now, not by government media, but people like killed by police and the Free Thought Project. They have a YouTube channel now. I suggest you check it out. Because they didn't have one before. I don't know when they got one, but I had found it recently. So they may have had one for a while, but they didn't at first. They just had the website where they were writing articles and things like that. Because you look at all these videos. I mean, you can go on YouTube and just put in different keywords regarding police. And the things that you just see people.
Alpha team report.
What's happening, Heather?
Alpha team isn't responding.
Bravo?
Still nothing.
You lost both teams? Get a grip on this operation, Heather. That's bored. Green light, Fiesta.
Sir, I need more time.
We have no time. Are you going to give that order or not?
Sir, please.
You're too naive to see the truth. There's no bringing in Bourne. He has to be put down. And you obviously cannot do what has to be done. I am taking operational control. Asset, you have a green light. Repeat, you have a green light on Bourne.
Copy, guys.
We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to pick the laws. We enforce them. But at the end of the day, each and every member is to go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan liberty for all. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is August 2nd, 2016. I had a little fumble there over the new month. Our first show in August. So I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and we are coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights, Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, and you can listen on Spreaker.com, NonpartisanLibertyForAll.com, and to the archives immediately following the show on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, and SoundCloud, as well as the next day on Stitcher and iTunes. On Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty and self-ownership, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom. Exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. And we are happy to hear from you either via phone at 702-470-7664, That's 702-470-7664, or via Skype at Nonpartisan Liberty for All, which is the username. Just send a contact request with your name and what you want to talk about. And check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, which has all the contact information as well as links to all the social media original articles. I have actually just written a few that I posted over the weekend, and other things as well, archives, things like that. So you can also find all of the archives, every show we've ever done, at Spreaker.com. Sorry, I seem a little out of it. I woke up about 15 minutes ago, almost exactly. I fell asleep on the couch before the show started. And believe it or not, I was watching CNN. I tried to watch some of the government media shows to see what bullshit they're putting out there. Posting and with the interactions with police are just crazy. And you see how much you see the obedient side. You really do, regardless what people say, because the same way people will sit there and say, well, you know, one of the big things is ID. Somebody sitting there, there's a lot of videos where, say, somebody's not doing anything, or somebody's filming something that now they consider, if you're filming certain things, you could be filming them because you're a terrorist and you're going to blow it up. Of course, nothing, besides the World Trade Center, which I don't think they needed to film it first. Nothing's ever been blown up, but they claim there were all these plots, whatever. But they so they film these videos, and they may do it on purpose. And then you have the ones at checkpoints too, same type of thing. So it's nothing serious. The person will just say that they don't answer questions, and they'll ask for an ID, the cop. Now, when the person says that I'm not going to give you an ID unless you suspect me of a crime, which, depending on the state, I found out that in the state of Texas, which is pretty cool, you don't have to ID yourself until you're arrested. In Nevada, you have to ID yourself if you have to say who you are, I believe, just if a fucking cop asks you, which is fucked up. And Nevada is one of the more freer states, but it's becoming less free. That might be just a Clark County thing, but I think it's a state thing. I'm not sure, because usually things like that are state. But because of all these fuckheads moving in from California, but when it comes to guns, Nevada's a better state to live in, because you can't even open carry handguns in Texas. So Texas, which really shocked me when I found that out, and they fingerprint you when you get your license. So there's, it's weird. Depending on the state, you're going to find the positives and the negatives. But Nevada in general is a freer, and as I've talked about before, there's levels of freedom. It doesn't mean it's for free. It's just freer than like Massachusetts, but that doesn't mean anything. No state is free. It's just what level of freedom. It's like everything. I don't know how you do it on a scale, because really, like, everything freedom-wise is like a 2 or a 3 at the highest, and how do you even fit it all in there? Like, I guess you go to negatives or something. But, like, Massachusetts is like a -5. I don't know. I'd put it, having lived there, one of the Mass, California, although I'd probably put Mass lower than California. It's hard, because you look at, like, guns. California's seems to be at least a little freer with guns than Massachusetts, at least traveling from other states to California with guns. But I don't know, they could have changed their laws. And but yeah, Massachusetts actually, I don't know if I had brought this story up, that they